Hello, this is Malorian with the Orc Tactical Team, and today what we're going to be talking about is war bosses. Now, in every army you want to make sure that when you're putting together your list, you're making sure that every single selection you take has a single purpose, or it could be multi-purpose, but basically there should be a defined role in your list for that choice. And a lot of times is to give strength to whatever theme you're going with for the army, or it's trying to counterbalance a weakness that you already have in your army. And so when we're looking at the war boss, we're really going to be looking at those things. Now, first off, the number one reason why an orc army wants to have a war boss is for the leadership. This guy is leadership 9 as opposed to some of your troops saying like your night goblins, which are leadership 5. And in an army that suffers from having to take fear tests and panic tests, that leadership is critical. So I'd say that if you're at the point where you can take a war boss, take it. It's a given. You know, you need to take this guy. And right to get this off the list of things that are possible right now, the wyvern boss, I would not look at that. A war boss can be in a wyvern, but wyverns usually, fly around, and if they fly away from your lines, that means that leadership bubble is leaving. And yes, you can't keep that wyvern back with your lines and fly out to the last second, but you know what big wyverns get when they stay back? Cannonballs. So I wouldn't suggest that. Now let's talk about some of the three different types of war bosses you can take. You can take just a plain war boss, you can take a savage war boss, or you can take a black orc war boss. Obviously the regular one is the cheapest. If you take savage, then you get frenzy and you get a 6+ ward save, and if you go for the black orc, then you get weapon skill 7, you can get heavy armor, and then you're also a black orc for quelling animosity. So when you're first looking, deciding which one you're going to be going with, I'd say the number one thing you want to look at again is what do you want from this guy. And if it's just cheap leadership, maybe you just want to take the plain old orc war boss. If you're trying to be a little bit more aggressive, obviously the savage orc war boss is your best bet. But I find that a lot of people go for the black orc one, and I'm really fairly against that in most cases. And the reason why I don't like the black orc war boss is because it's 25 more points than a regular one. And I think that when they were trying to take that points into account, it was taking into account the quell animosity and being a black orc. Now, a black orc gets to auto-wah, but it's being a general, you can auto-wah anyway. And yes, you can quell animosity with your black orc character. However, I find that usually if it's just before combat, the critical time when you want to make sure you don't fail your animosity, that's when you're declaring your wah anyway, so it's not even a big deal. And as opposed to that, so you're paying all these big points really just for maybe being able to get heavy armor or for a weapon skill. With the savage orc war boss, it's only 5 more points than a regular one, but frenzy gives you an extra attack, you're immune to psychology, and you just get a free 6+ ward save. Now you might be saying, who cares about a 6+ ward save? That sucks. Well, really, a lot of people actually pay big points to get that best boss at, which is the 5+ ward save, which is only one better than the 6+, which you could be getting for free anyway. So, obviously, I really like the Savage Orc War Boss. When you're looking at ways to try and kit these guys out, there's a lot of different ways you can be doing it, and again, what you're looking at is trying to find out what your army needs. If you are just needing that leadership bubble while you stay back and shoot with magic and spear chuckas, maybe you don't give them that very much. Some cheap ways to go is if you just give a Savage Orc War Boss an extra choppa, that's it. All of a sudden, on the first round of combat, he has 6 strength 6 attacks, just like a dragon. And that, he's like 1/3 of that dragon, or at least a half, and that's a huge damage output just from there. I find though that it's actually usually better to go for the great weapon, just because you then have that strength 7 all the time. Because when it comes to orcs, I find orcs a lot like dwarves in a way that you still have your war machines, you can blast things from far, but it seems once these big monsters get into combat, all of a sudden you have trouble. You just can't beat them sometimes with static res, and you just can't kill them with regular boys. So I find that a big thing I need in my army is a war boss that can kill big things. And so that extra choppa might be good if you're trying to kill lots of little guys, but at the same time, lots of little guys might be easier to kill anyway. I'm looking more at things like stanks, like dragons, like lords, stuff like that. I really got to get a big punch for, and I really got to reduce that armor save as much as possible. So that's why a lot of times I'm looking for the great weapon there. Now, one thing that you can do with the Black Orc Big Boss that can be kind of nice is you can get a really good armor save. You got your 5+ save if you take heavy armor. You got your boar that gives you all the way up to 3+. Take another shield or an enchanted shield, and all of a sudden you're at a 2+ or a 1+ save. That's really good, and if that's the way you want to try and keep your guys safe, good for you. But I have found, when I'm trying to fight these big monsters, that they themselves have really high strengths. You know, things like minotaurs have strength 8 and crazy stuff like that, which really, it doesn't matter what your armor save is, it gets reduced to almost nothing. So you pay all these points to get that boar, to make him a black orc, you know, all the extra little points for getting him the heavy armor and things like that, and then all of a sudden when you get hit in close combat, it goes down to a 6+ or nothing save anyway. So it was really kind of depressing. So one of the things I really took a look at for when I was putting together a war boss is to stop him from getting hurt through toughness. Now, one very easy way to do that won't cost him any more points no matter what type of war boss you take is simply put him inside a Night Goblin unit with nets. What that does is on a 2+, they're going to net the opponent, they're -1 strength, and basically that's the same way as you being +1 toughness. And as well, if you do have an armor save, if you are going with that Black Orc, all of a sudden it's like you having one better armor save. So that's a really synergy way to just try and get a bonus from him. But I found that, you know, what I can also do with mine is I can just put on the armor of Gork that gives +1 toughness, put him in that unit, and all of a sudden he's basically just like toughness 7. So that means, you know, if you get fighting some guys that are charging in with a bunch of strength 5 attacks, they're needing 6s to wound you. Even big tough things that are strength 7 with, you know, these huge lords with these great weapons, you're only wounding on a 4+. So I found that was kind of the better way to stop some damage. But in the end, you're going to have to balance that and kind of take a look at who you're fighting, because some people just know that war bosses are harder to kill than your little guys, and so they're just going to be directing their attacks to the little guys anyway. So if that's the case, you might even just save the points and just go for all attack. I also find if you're taking a Savage Orc War Boss, that a really good thing to take is the Battle Brew, because one of the bad things about the Battle Brew is that it might give you Frenzy. He has Frenzy anyway, so what that really means is on a 3+, you're going to have Hatred. So, I mean, this guy running in with that great weapon, he can have 5 attacks, re-rolling to hit, you know, 2+ to wound, killing a bunch of guys. I obviously love that setup. Just to talk about some other setups out there, there's one that on War Series would be called like the Avian build, and what that one is you have your Black Orc, which has your magical weapon where you re-roll to hit all the time, get the +1 strength. You have your best boss and you know, on the boar, heavy armor, shield, blah blah blah, and so that's, you actually see that in a lot of armies. That one's kind of more of a constant killer, so he's good if he's against rank and file troops. So you might want to give that a try if you don't want to go for the more risky Savage Orc War Boss. But if you are good at, you know, stopping from being baited out, things like that, I really highly suggest taking a Savage Orc War Boss with the great weapon, with the Battle Brew, and then if you have some spare points, taking that Armor Gork for the +1 toughness. Some other things that I've seen out there that are not too bad is if you give them the Battle Axe of Lassois, that can be okay if you put them in a big unit. You know, the Wa Cleaver, I mean, that's a big stank killer, but a lot of these can be really expensive, so it's really best to try and find the one that's going to give you the best bang for your buck. So that's all I want to say for today. Be really careful with the way you build them. Make sure that they give something to your army that nothing else does. And next time we're going to be talking about maximizing the uses for your skirmishers. Alright, bye.